What up, Geek fam? GeekSpot82 here. Thought it was time to do another Magic the Gathering deck tech. And today I brought you Edgar Markov and his host of vampiric friends. Let's get into this deck box and see what I have in store for you guys. I even got a surprise thanks to Star Izzet Altars. I'm probably butchering that Star, and I apologize, but I'm going to link her YouTube channel and her Instagram below. Make sure you go check her out if you need an altar, but I'm going to surprise you guys with the altar she did for me specifically for this Vampires deck. I'm super excited about it, and let's get into it. All right, guys, so like I said, Edgar Markov is our commander. He's Mardu in 3 for a 4/4 legendary vampire knight with imminence. Whenever you cast another vampire spell, if he is in the command zone or on the battlefield, create a 1/1 black vampire creature token. He himself has first strike and haste, and whenever he attacks, put a 1/1 counter on each vampire you can control. He is mad crazy powerful. So I'm going to need all the vampire tokens I can get. So I have bat tokens, Eldrazi tokens, vampire tokens from Command Zone. Thanks, guys. And of course I've got my 1/1 vampire tokens. I like to try to have as many tokens as I possibly can, just for the flavor of the game. So the next thing I want to talk about is the lands. It's the boring part. We're going to build up to the fun stuff. Lands, I've got 19 basic lands. And the other lands, building up to 32, I have Luxury Suite. So a lot of my lands I have tapping right now because my deck was way too overpowered and I wanted it to be able to be a fun deck to play and not overpower all of my opponents when I was playing it. So Command Tower lets me add 1 mana of any color. Orzhov Baliska, bounce land. Akram Refuge, gain a life land. So the gain a life land comes into play a great deal later when I have some of the enchantments and other creatures that whenever I gain life, it's going to take life from you. Mortuary Mire lets me bring back a card from my graveyard. Scoured Barrens, another life land. I'm not going to lie, this one's in here simply because it was foil, but it also, target player loses 1 life and I gain life for Orzhov in 3. Passive Ancestry. Bloodfell Caves, again, life land. Cabal Stronghold, add 1 swamp for each basic swamp you control. So it's pay 3 and tap to do so. Stinsa Bloodhall deals 2 damage to target player. Bajuka Bog enters the battlefield, exile all cards from a target player's graveyard. And Radiant Fountain, another life land for a colorless mana. So all in all, I have 32 lands in the deck. Not a high land deck, but I'm running a few artifacts to compensate for that. So here's Well of Lost Dreams. Whenever I gain life, you may pay X, where X is less than or equal to the amount of life you gained. If you do, draw X cards. Commander Sphere, a little mana fixing. Blade of the Blood Chief. Whenever a creature dies, put a 1/1 counter on equipped creature. If equipped creature is a vampire, put 2 counters on it instead. So that just beefs up one of your best vampires. Coat of Arms. Each creature gets +1/+1 for each other creature on the battlefield it shares at least 1 creature type with. So all of the creatures in here are vampires with the exception of 1. A lot of them are legendary, a lot of them are knights or warriors. So I get to double up on some of those counters. We have Door of Destinies. When it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Whenever you cast a spell of the chosen type, put a charge counter on Door of Destinies. Creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+1 for each counter on Door of Destinies. The Savai Crystal from Ikoria. And Soul Ring. You got to have a Soul Ring, right? As a commander player, you have to have a Soul Ring. So let's talk about instants, because I only have 2 of them. The first one being Mortify. Destroy target creature or enchantment. Second being Crackling Doom. Deal 2 damage to each opponent. Each opponent sacrifices a creature with the greatest power among creatures he or she controls. Love that card. So if I'm not running that many instants, I have to be running a crazy amount of sorceries. And I wouldn't say it's a crazy amount, but I'm running a pretty good amount. So I'm running Stints of Bloodhaul. It deals, whenever Stints of Bloodhaul deals damage to target opponent equal to the number of vampires you control, and draw a card. Blood Tribute. So this one has a kicker. And to kick it, you tap and untap a vampire you control, so those tokens come in great handy here. But target opponent loses half or his or her life rounded up. If it was kicked, you gain life equal to the life lost this way. Diabolic Revelation. Search your library for up to X cards and put those cards in your hand, then shuffle your library. The new Grim Tutor. Thank you, M21. Merciless Eviction. Just situationally can change the game. Sanguine Indulgence. I just loved the fact that it was foil and it played into the life lost, life playing aspect of my deck. And a Disrupt Decorum. Goad all creatures you don't control. So I'm going to make you attack, but you can't attack me. So I like to think of it as Edgar here, putting them under mind control and having them attack all willy-nilly into the fray. So let's talk about enchantments now. I'm running Kindred Boon. When it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Pay 1 and a white, put a divinity counter on it. Creatures you control of the chosen type. Each creature you control with a divinity counter has indestructible, so it makes those vampires indestructible. Call of the Bloodline. Discard a card, create a 1/1 black vampire knight creature token with lifelink. Radiant Destiny. Choose a creature type. Creatures you control the chosen type get +1/+1 as long as you have the city's blessing. They also have vigilance. So in a perfect world, I have indestructible and vigilance. But if that doesn't work out, I'm running Black Market. So whenever a creature dies, put a charge counter on Black Market. At the beginning of my pre-combat main phase, add Swamp to your mana pool for each charge counter on it. So that's some more mana fixing. Stints of Masquerade. Attacking creatures you control have first strike. So now I'm indestructible. I have lifelink. I'm sorry, not lifelink. I have vigilance and I have first strike. And whenever a vampire I control deals combat damage to a player, put a 1/1 counter on it. Sanguine Blood. Whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. So I can create that loop where I'm hurting you, I'm gaining life, and now you're losing more life. Profane Procession. 1 in Orzhov. I can pay 3 in Orzhov and exile target creature. Then, if 3 or more cards are exiled with Profane Procession, transform it, and it flips. You can tap it for 1 mana of any color in your mana pool, or you can pay 2 in Orzhov and tap it and put a creature card exiled with this permanent onto the battlefield under your control. So I like to think of it as me biting those creatures, they die, and then I get to bring them back as vampires, although they don't have that keyword, right? So I'm also running a Legion's Landing. If you're running vampires, you have to be running a Legion's Landing. I was lucky enough to get this in one of the promo packs. It has the alternate art on the back, the map art. Just gorgeous. But when it enters the battlefield, create 3 1/1 white vampire creature tokens with lifelink. When you attack with 3 or more creatures, transform it. And then you can tap it and add 1 white to your mana pool, or you can pay 3 and create a vampire creature token with lifelink. Blind Obedience, 1 in white. It also has Extort. Artifacts and creatures your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped. So I'd like to think I put them in hypnosis and they're frozen in their boots. A little Phyrexian Arena. At the beginning of your upkeep, draw a card and lose a life. I'm drawing so many cards and gaining so much life. This is just great. So those are the enchantments I'm running. I think you're starting to see the bigger picture of what the vampires are trying to do. But just in case you're not, Soren wanted to step in and show you guys a couple of things. So I only put planeswalkers if I have an extra, because you guys know I collect the planeswalkers. And maybe one of these videos I'll give you a tour of my planeswalker collection. But this is the Soren from M20, the Imperious Bloodlord. And mainly it's for this middle ability, the +1, sacrifice a vampire. When you do, it deals 3 damage to any target and I gain 3 life. And then if I really want to, I can put a vampire creature card from my hand onto the battlefield for -3. So if I'm really hurting for mana, he only costs 3 to get out, I can then bounce something out of my hand pretty quick and easy. And then I got Soren Vengeful Bloodlord. So this was from one of the Secret Lair drops. I want to say it was the Rats drop that I got this one in specifically. But he has that static ability. As long as it's your turn, creatures and planeswalkers you control have lifelink. So now I'm running Indestructible, First Strike, Lifelink, and Vigilance. So those are the 2 planeswalkers I run in this deck. Of course, it's Soren because he is a vampire. So let's talk about the rest of the creatures. And they are in no discerning order. I'm just going to show them to you as I have them here. Falconwrath Noble. Whenever Falconwrath Noble or another creature dies, target player loses 1 life, I gain 1 life. Vengeant Vampire. So again, this one's in foil from M19. 4/4 with lifelink. When he dies, destroy target creature an opponent controls and gain 4 life. So there's that life gain. Bloodline Necromancer. It's a 3/2 with lifelink. When he enters the battlefield, you may return a target vampire or wizard creature card from your graveyard to your battlefield. Malakir Blood Witch. 4/4 with flying and protection from white. When she enters the battlefield, each opponent loses life equal to the number of vampires I control, and I gain life that way. Arvad the Cursed. So he's going to make all my other legendary creatures bigger. He himself has Death Touch and Lifelink and a 3/3 body. Defiant Bloodlord. 4/5 with flying. Whenever I gain life, target opponent loses that much life. Huge card, especially with all the life gain I'm going to be having. Vampire Nighthawk. So Star talked about this card when she was opening one of her box openings on her channel, about how she hated this card. I'm sorry. This is my favorite Magic the Gathering card. This was the first card I actively bought and sought out. I love this little guy. He's not the strongest, but he will forever be in my vampire deck. 2/3 with flying, Death Touch, and lifelink. Patron of the Vein, Vampire Shaman, 4/4. Flying, when Patron of the Vein enters the battlefield, destroy target creature an opponent controls. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, exile it and put a 1/1 counter on each vampire I control. Captivating Vampire. Other vampire creatures you control get +1/+1. That's the only reason I'm running. He's Vampire Lord. Cordial Vampire. Again, whenever he or another creature I control dies, put a 1/1 counter on each vampire I control. Rakish Hare. Whenever a vampire you control deals combat damage to a player, put a 1/1 counter on it. So you can see these vampires are just going to get huge. They're going to have lifelink. They're going to have vigilance, indestructible. Twilight Prophet, just in case some things go wrong. At the beginning of my upkeep, if I have the City's Blessing, reveal the top card of my library and put it into my hand. Each opponent loses X life, and I gain X life, where X is that card's converted mana cost. Vein Drinker. A 4/4 with flying. Vein Drinker deals damage equal to its power to target creature. That creature deals damage equal to its power to Vein Drinker. Blood Artists. Whenever Blood Artist or another creature dies, target player loses 1 life, I gain 1 life. So that one mixed with Patron of the Vein. So now I'm destroying a creature you control, but I'm going to gain some life, you're going to lose some life. And when it dies, I get to make my vampires bigger. I love it. What about Sangromancer? A 3/3 with flying. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, I may gain 3 life. Whenever an opponent discards a card, I may gain 3 life. So another life gain outlet. Vampire Lord with First Strike, giving other vampires First Strike. just in case my enchantment didn't go through well. Mathis the Fiend Seeker. At the beginning of my end step, put a bounty counter on target creature an opponent controls. For as long as that creature has a bounty counter on it, it has when this creature dies, each opponent draws a card and gains 2 life. So it makes you the target instead of me. Licia, Sanguine Tribune. Costs 1 less to cast for each 1 life you've gained this turn. First strike, lifelink, pay 5 life. Put 3 1/1 counters on Licia. Activate this ability only on your turn and only once each turn. Vampire Lord. Olivia Volderon. So basically this card, you're going to pay 2 and she's going to bite somebody, dealing 1 damage to another creature. That creature becomes a vampire in addition to its other types. And she gets a +1/+1 counter. And then later, you can tap 5 and gain control of target vampire for as long as I control Olivia. So she builds her own army. And then I have her mobilized for war. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under my control, I may discard a card. If I do, put a 1/1 counter on that creature. It gains haste until the end of turn and becomes a vampire in addition to its other types. I'm not gonna lie, this one is in here because I absolutely love the art. Absolutely love it. Miranda Mears, you killed it on this one. A 1/4 with flying and lifelink. At the beginning of your end step, if you gain 3 more life, each opponent loses 3 life. Very relevant, all the same, but that one was in there because I loved the art. Marvin Fane, the Dusk Apostle. Whenever one or more non-token vampires you control attack, create a 1/1 white vampire creature token with lifelink. And we finally get to the mystery altar that I was talking about. It's the Butcher of Malakir, but it is altered to look like Akasha from Queen of the Damned in her stone form. I love this card. Star, you killed it. Thank you so much for doing this for me. I appreciate it. For those of you who don't know, the Butcher of Malakir is a 5/4 vampire warrior with flying, and whenever he or another creature I control dies, is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a creature. So it plays into some of those other combos I already had working very nicely. Vishkal, the Blood Arbiter, 5/5 vampire with lifelink and flying. Sacrifice a creature, put X 1/1 counters on him, where X is the sacrificed creature's power. I can remove all 1/1 counters from him. Target creature gets -1/-1 till the end of turn for each +1/+1 counter removed this way. So this is my way of getting around your indestructible creatures. Anawan the Ruin Sage. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player sacrifices a non-vampire creature. So we mix that with Bloodfane, or Patron of the Vein, and Blood Artist. And that's a nice little combo that's just wiping your board, pumping me up, and setting me up for the win. The Haunt of the Hightower, legendary 3/3 vampire with flying and lifelink. Whenever he attacks, defending player discards a card. Whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, put a 1/1 counter on him. Crimson Honor Guard, 4/5 with trample. At the beginning of each player's end step, Crimson Honor Guard deals 4 damage to that player unless he or she controls their commander. And the only creature that is not a vampire, the Avatar of Woe. I'm getting a little bit of glare, I apologize. If there are 10 or more creature cards in total in all graveyards, she costs 6 less to cast. She has fear, and she can tap to destroy target creature. It cannot be regenerated. She is just a machine. Vana, Butcher of Magan, 4/4 with vigilance and lifelink. Tap it, pay 7 life, destroy target non-land permanent. Activate this ability only during your turn. Sanctum Seeker, a 3/4. Whenever a vampire you control attacks, each opponent loses 1 life and I gain 1 life. Drana, Callistra Bloodchief, 4/4 with flying. Pay X and 2 black. Target creature gets -0/-X until the end of turn. And Callistra Bloodchief gets +X/+0 until the end of turn. She's going to drain your life force. The Indulgent Aristocrat, He's just a 1/1 vampire with lifelink, but I can pay 2 and sacrifice a creature and put a counter on each vampire I control. Alonda the Dusk Rose. Whenever another creature dies, put a 1/1 counter on her. Whenever she dies, create X 1/1 white vampire creature tokens with lifelink, where X is Alonda's power. Nirkana Revenant, Vampire Shade. Whenever I tap a swamp for mana, add an additional swamp. Nirkana Revenant gets +1/+1 until the end of turn for 1 single swamp. Bloodlord of Vasgoth, a 3/3 vampire warrior with Bloodthirst. I love this mechanic. If an opponent was dealt damage this turn, this creature enters the battlefield with 3 1/1 counters on it, with flying, and whenever I cast a vampire creature spell, it gains Bloodthirst 3. Almost done, guys. Yahini, Undying Partisan. It's a 2/2 with haste. Whenever a creature an opponent controlled dies, put a 1/1 counter on Yahini, Undying Partisan. Sacrifice a creature. Yahini gains indestructible until the end of turn. Karzov, Sanguine Pureblood. 4/4 flying vampire. Whenever this creature an opponent control is dealt damage, put a 1/1 counter on Karzov, Sanguine Pureblood. Pay 3 and a red. Karzov deals 2 damage to target creature. And finally, the Bishop of Rebirth. 3/4 with Vigilance. Whenever Bishop of Rebirth attacks, you may return target creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. That is the vampire deck, you guys. Edgar Markov and his bevy of beautiful babies is going to come and snatch away your life. It's up to you to stop him. Do you have a deck powerful enough to do so? Let me know. Let me know what deck you guys want to see next. And thanks for tuning in. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and leave me a comment below. And we'll see you on the next one. Bye, guys.